Welcome to Connect It with Kim. I'm Kim McDonald, connecting you to the stories of the change agents of our world. You change, they change. Hi, I'm here with Nicole Gibson, author of Love Out Loud, and a real young entrepreneur in leading the change on loving. And coming from a place of loving and spreading that love to others and showing them that we can heal anything with just love. And
Amen.
That's my message too. So we had to talk. Nicole is only 25 doing this. It took me until I was 40 to learn these lessons, and she is a very evolved spiritual being that I really want to have her words out there. So please tell us, Nicole, how did you get so evolved so young in life?
Well, I mean, that's a pretty multifaceted question. I kind of come from the philosophy that we're all already awakened, and it's just particular triggers in life will help you see what it is you already are. And I guess, like we were talking about before the interview, pain is a really fast track way to realize who it is you are beneath that pain, because once you overcome pain, you understand that that's not you. And I guess when you look at someone who seems or acts or feels evolved, it's someone that knows how to take pain and experiences in their stride, maybe, knows how to be responsive to life instead of reactive to life.
Exactly.
And once upon a time I was extremely reactive, so that was a process, even if I'm still young. Definitely felt like there were many years I wasn't that way.
And you felt out of control in those times, right? You were reactive.
Completely, yeah.
And then did you feel shame after you would react?
Yeah, definitely. I can relate to the shame spiral and cycle, but I often think that shame comes when you're being observed, when someone else is witness to behaviours of being out of control. But for me, so much of my behaviour and the illness I went through, which was an eating disorder, was actually behind closed doors and no one really knew what I was going through. So the shame wouldn't hit after those episodes of long, prolonged periods of starvation or binging and purging. It actually came more when I really needed to heal and recover, and I had to sort of look at the world and the relationships in my life and come clean and say, you don't really know who I am.
Yeah. So when you were in those spirals of starvation, were you, and you were keeping it behind closed doors, did you hide that from your family and yourself? Did you feel like you really weren't acknowledging the sickness that it was?
I knew what I was doing, but I didn't realize that it had control of me. For many years, I felt like I was in control of the illness and not the other way around. And I was definitely consciously hiding it from other people because it was my coping strategy, and I guess on some level that shame did exist at the prospect of being caught out.
Yeah.
And I didn't want that crutch taken away from me.
Yeah, you wanted to control that thing that was keeping you alive. Yeah. And it was keeping you not focused on the real hurt inside, maybe?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Especially when, you have a sense that, and I think it's something everyone can relate to, if you feel like the people in your life don't have the capacity to truly acknowledge what you're going through, yet they have an opinion about the way in which you're coping with that, it feels like it's a very unfair. It's this feeling of it being very unfair. Sort of don't have an opinion about the way I cope with my pain if you're not prepared to hold me in my pain and help me figure out a different way.
Yeah, hold space for me.
Yeah.
And
it's like taking away someone's crutch who's disabled and throwing it away and not helping them sort of get to the next destination.
So if you could go back and speak to your parents and tell them what they could have done differently to maybe help you get there sooner, would there be anything? And I hate going back.
Yeah.
I hate going back.
I don't.
But my audience might glean something. Because I know the art of letting go as a parent is really hard for parents to let go and watch their children struggle.
Yeah.
But it's in the struggle that they find their strength. And if we
and you can
try and force them, most of the time that's counterproductive. So I just want to hear from you, the child that was suffering, and now that you have come through it, have you ever looked at it from that angle?
Yeah, definitely. And I work with a lot of parents that will come, which is, a mirror of, I get to see the other side of what I was going through, which is it's such a humbling space to be in, because I get to experience that rounded sense of compassion.
Yeah.
So yeah, my advice to my parents, but I guess this is the advice I give to all parents, would have just been, pain isn't, and it's not even a parent, it's human. It's not specific to a parent-child dynamic, maybe it's magnified, but what it really comes down to is don't be afraid of someone else's pain. Being afraid of someone else's pain is a direct indication that you're not okay with your own pain.
Exactly.
And what I needed, not just from a parent, but from anyone in my life at that time, was for them to not fix me, but actually just be with me and normalize my experience, because through long-term mental illness, you start to feel so alienated.
So alone. And it's almost like, even if you're not feeling the shame, you sense it in others, like they're ashamed, maybe.
Yeah, well, they don't know how to, especially my illness was physical, right? So I got to actually see the reactions on people's faces, and they wouldn't know where to look because it was a confronting illness to look at.
Right.
And that really showed me, like, where people are at. But even then, even though that would hurt me, I could understand. It wasn't like a blame. It wasn't, how dare you not be here for me. I had an understanding, even in sort of my darkest days, that was because seeing someone else in pain, generally is really confronting for other people.
Right.
And how many people in the world are really, I write it in my book as in the acknowledgement chapter, how many people are really crazy enough to look their shit in the eye and deal with it and go through all of that pain and become a warrior on the other side of that.
Yeah. And that's really when the growth happens, is when you look at you and not look at them. So I know that's a tough question, because I know anyone that goes through struggle also lets go of blame and shame and judgment of other people. It's no one else's struggle. It's yours. And it was brought to you and brought, from a place, of your pain.
Or even when you see
realized.
other people in struggle, if that's affecting you in a way that you don't know how to cope with that, even then you can look at yourself.
Right.
What is it about that person's struggle that is really hard for me to be with?
Yeah.
And if you can look at it like that, then it doesn't become, to be there for someone doesn't become a self-sacrifice.
Right.
It's actually an opportunity for you to look at yourself. I feel like I'm at a place now where I can hold people in extreme amounts of vulnerability, and it's not that it's not that I'm unaffected, but it doesn't bring me down. I don't have to experience what they're experiencing in order to hold space for them and to have compassion for their experience.
Right.
But that's because I've dealt with my own stuff.
Yeah. You know your truth. You own your truth. You can stand in your truth and hold space for that other person and not make it about you. And that's really what I teach, is in a relationship, you have to be objective, because if you're in a fight position or in a defensive position, you can't speak and have compassion and
there's
see
no
them.
place for connection.
There's zero connection. Yeah.
I teach it like with blame, on the other side of blame. What blame really is communicating in an unconscious way is a need. So whatever you're blaming something for is actually the communication of a need that you have. So say, really basic example would be, you come home and your partner hasn't done the dishes, right? And you get angry and you're like, you never do the dishes. Why don't you ever do the dishes? And immediately they jump on the defense, right? But if you could inquire and be like, what is it about me that wants to automatically attack and blame? And the need in that might be, I actually really need support around the house. Or I need to feel like you consider me in your day-to-day actions.
Right.
If you entered that space and said, hey babe, I really need to feel like you care enough to consider me, and you communicated your need, automatically the situation would be diffused. And that's the next level of really understanding blame. It's not just about snapping your fingers and being like, okay, well, I'm not going to blame anyone for anything anymore, but actually understand where that's coming from in you, so that you can help navigate that in yourself and in your relationships. And the other way around, if someone's blaming you for something, ask yourself, what do they need from me right now?
Right. That's great. From a 25-year-old. This is what I teach, Nicole, and I still am so impressed that, at 25, how many relationships have you been in to see this behavior? Is it just,
Probably too many.
Too many?
Yeah.
no, but those are those are opportunities for growth, and obviously it's working. But that's good, because that's so true for no matter what relation, if it's the parent-child relationship, or the husband-wife relationship, or the
relationships, you see
any human relationship. But I just think you have such a gift to use your voice to shed love and light, and that's exactly what you just described. Coming from a place of compassion as opposed to defensiveness tears down those walls. It shows your vulnerability. It says how you feel, so that then you can hold space for let them love you.
Yeah.
And receive that love.
Definitely. Well, it's sort of like becomes a choiceless choice once you understand, because it's not just benefiting other people; it benefits you. It's I think we have a narrative in our cultures that really gets in the way of people understanding this, and it's the nature and the narrative of competition. Like you have to lose in order for me to win.
Yes.
And we can't see
competitiveness,
and that it always has to be. We get sold this idea that it always has to be a power struggle, but the reality of nature is when one element of nature is thriving, the rest of nature thrives with it.
Exactly.
And humanity is the same. If you're thriving, that actually means that I'm thriving more, because we're only as strong as our weakest link. Genuinely, that's not just a nice idea. That's actually how
scientifically sound.
It's how evolution occurs. Like you hold a perception for humanity that I can never access. I can never be better at doing you than you can, ever.
We each have a blueprint.
Yeah.
And I think everybody has that greatness, just like you said. Everybody has the answers inside of them. But getting to that place where you tap into that and resonate at that, and we're still human, so we're going to have moments of comparison or judgment, and as soon as they come in, do you have tricks to get yourself right back out of that? Like when you feel that moment of, I didn't get that that interview, or that podcast person that I wanted to interview, or whatever it is that or do you have any moments where you have to redirect, and do you have any tools that you use that you can give?
Yeah, I think it comes down to self-awareness. I guess I've been practicing this for a long time because my background was in performance. So I experienced a lot of rejection, and you just got to realize it's not about you. Like,
it's not about you. That's one of the chapters in my book.
Yeah, it's really not about you. And don't place so much significance on yourself. Get over yourself, because actually no one really... Everyone's so insecure in the world that they don't really care.
They're not really thinking about you all that much.
It's a liberating thing to understand. But I guess a more spiritual answer to that, because you're important and you're worthy, and I don't mean that in that,
that's exactly how I write about it in my book. So I actually find that refreshing that you just said that, because the chapter is, it's not about you, and it's like they're really not thinking about you that much.
You have total permission to just do what you want to do, because everyone else is too busy doing that, and that's a great thing. But the other awareness that I have is it's like an energetic thing. It's not a cognitive process. I feel I have a very strong center, and I think I've always had a sense of determination and centeredness, even when I've been sort of mentally unwell and not emotionally regulated. It's like I was always a high functioning person, even when I had mental health problems. So there is this sense of center. So what that means is, and the way I sort of try and teach it to people is, once you know your center, you know what your center's not. So as soon as I'm triggered, or my ego gets bruised, or I feel rejected, it's a very quick turnaround. It's literally just like bringing my energy, because it's when you let your ego win, it's like you give your energy to other people. You give your power to other people. That's what it is. So I have an awareness as soon as I'm doing that, because I feel off balance. I feel out of center. So I literally I take a breath, and I'm like, that's never the answer. Disempowering yourself is never the answer. If you are sad about losing this opportunity, if you let this opportunity unravel you and disempower you, not only did you lose that opportunity, you're actually losing a whole bunch of other opportunities by not holding your energy.
Right.
And I've actually found that, like a rep at gym, the more that you can get triggered and actually hold your energy anyway and your worth anyway, you just get better and better opportunities.
Building that muscle, a resiliency muscle, to just redirect your energy And I call it grounding and just going back to heart space, because we get in our head a lot. So yeah, that's great. That's very similar to, so I want people to know, we don't operate at this level of not feeling. We have to feel and express when something comes in to our, field.
You just get really fit. That's all it is. You get a fitness. So every time it comes up, it's not this whole massive dramatic process. I have an issue with some subcultures of sort of spiritual development and personal development that dramatize process. I don't think that processes should be sacred and they should be honored, but as soon as they're dramatized, it sets an unrealistic precedent, and people feel like they're not doing the work unless it's overly dramatic. Like, often my processes are very personal and intimate with myself, and that allows me to be, very anti-fragile, because I'm not relying on particular conditions in order to work on myself. I can work on myself in the moment. It's not dramatic. Most of the time people don't even know that I'm going into my own power and my meditation, and that allows me to sort of be like a ninja.
Right. I like that. Yeah. I call it, when in stress, go to breath, and just the act of that's it.
So
This is it. Breath. Oxygenate the brain, and your brain feels less irrational, in that moment.
Another really useful thing is to just zoom out your perspective. Like, one of my go-tos is nothing is as important as love. The universe is always working for me. It's only ever evolving. And probably the most significant one is I'm going to die one day. Like, I have mortality. So what am I really stressing about? No one's getting out of here alive. You're going to die. Why invest in things that are not going to be important at that end of your life? You're not going to be thinking about the time you didn't get that opportunity. You're going to be thinking about the time that you didn't play full out and risk getting rejected. That's what you're going to be thinking about. You're going to be thinking about the time that you let that opportunity unravel you, and you place so much importance on that one thing, when it's like, a mentor used to say, focusing on things like that is like picking up a single grain of sand on the beach and thinking that that's the whole beach.
Right.
It's just so much more to the picture.
And I do find a lot of struggles with teens today, that something happens in their life to disrupt the norm, and they do have a lot more anxiety over it. And I really think that would be a great space for you is in schools. I don't think this way of thinking is taught. I know it wasn't taught in my day, and I know it's not being taught to my 16-year-old. Do you see yourself ever getting involved in education and traveling to different schools and doing talks?
The first organisation I founded is a not-for-profit in Oz, which predominantly works with schools.
Awesome.
Yeah, so we have a few programs, a primary program that uses art therapy to teach kids about language around feelings and express themselves, and then a middle school program that is the pursuit of purpose, and it's called What's the Point? So it's kind of reframing that defeatist attitude of teenagers and actually looking, well, there is a point, but it's up to you to design it. And what does that look like for you? And then a seniors program, which is about leadership, called Get Real. So about authentic leadership and heart-based leadership. And I spent many years delivering those programs and training my facilitators back home to deliver those programs.
Well, it was your principal that really stirred you to action and self-responsibility, right? By being vulnerable himself and shedding light on your darkness and allowing you to come out of that and get the help you needed. And so I think, teaching teachers is really crucial.
And parents, it's really a full community effort. That's why Rites of Passage is so solid for me, because it looks at all of the elements of community around not just the child, but around everyone. Because what we would see a lot when my team and I would deliver programs in schools, we'd have the kid leave week 1, for example, and be so excited and so happy and elated, and then they'd come back the next week and be like, Dad told me that was a stupid idea, or it wasn't being consolidated or supported or celebrated at home. And that, that could have easily made me really angry, because why would you put out the light of your kid? Like, it doesn't make any sense.
It shined on his darkness, that's why.
Exactly right. And then you've got to really have compassion and be like, well, one thing I say to people all the time is, it's one thing to define yourself by your limitations. It's another thing to define someone else by your limitations. So if you feel like you can't run a marathon, that's well and good, but don't start telling other people that they can't just because you don't feel you can, because it's just not the truth.
And that's so prevalent, isn't it?
Massive.
It's so prevalent.
Because we're so
you know?
self-oriented.
We're judging in others what we haven't
we
overcome.
think we're God. We literally, so many people, until they do work on themselves and start to actually be in service to other people, honestly believe the universe centers around them.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time it's not conscious. They just don't have a frame of reference beyond themselves.
Yeah. Yeah, that's powerful. I'm glad you brought that up. Do you feel like you get any attacks from people of that nature, dismissing what you're teaching, like you're more vulnerable to those things?
It's never a dismissal. It's usually always a trigger, like angry. And to me, I'm like, I must be doing a really good job.
Exactly.
You know? Like,
a little boost of confidence.
Yeah,
there.
like one of my favorite quotes is Einstein's quote, which is great minds will always have violent opposition. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I'll give you an example. Before I left Oz, I was running a seminar on actually specifically two parents, and I was talking about allowance and acceptance and how important that is as a parent. You know, when a young person's going through their adolescence and they're trying to figure out their identity, they need that space to inquire and to actually be challenged and experience pain and know who they are in the face of pain and all of these things. And how one of the most powerful things you can do is actually just stand by them and love them through that without trying to fix or change the process.
Yeah.
And this parent got so angry and was swearing and yelling at me, saying, you don't fucking understand what it's like when your kid's suicidal and you come home and there's blood all over the floor. It's a really heavy story. Like, how could you just stand by and allow that? And I just sort of took a deep breath, and first I was like, I just want to acknowledge and honour, like, your pain, first of all.
Yeah, validation is always good.
Yeah, but that's so real. Like,
so
not
real.
even as a technique in facilitation, but as a human. Like, I honour how hard that must be. And, like, good on you for coming into this space and still looking for answers. Mm-hmm. And secondly, I use the sort of analogy of approaching someone who was about to jump off a building, right? If you ran up to that person who was on the edge and you were screaming and you were stressed and you were uncentered and you were saying, don't jump, please don't jump, and you were trying to pull them and restrain them, how much more likely that stress would mean that they were going to jump. But if, imagine, and this is a hard thing to say to a parent, right? I just said,
I have
imagine,
to say that too.
Yeah.
I had to live it.
Yeah, right. If you went up to them and the first thing you said to them was, you're allowed to jump, but I just want you to know that I love you so much, and if you choose not to, I will do anything to help you work through this. And how different that approach is.
Totally. And that's an analogy for anything in life. You know, what you focus on and put your attention on, if it's the trying to fix or change someone, they usually repel that.
Totally.
You know?
Well, it's human nature.
It's human nature.
To rebel against boundaries and rules.
Oh, right.
But never, ever, any approach that seeks to take away someone's sovereignty
Yes.
is not the way. Because
Never
it's,
the way.
it's not the truth of who we are. We
Never
are sovereign.
the way. Yeah, I say it's like what, you know, a lot of parents want to bring their kids to me to fix their kids. I'm like, they have to want to come. They have to want to come. They have to reach out until they're ready to do that. Then that really let's work on you.
Yeah.
And in that process, you will be able to let go of whether they do or not.
Yeah.
You know, and I liken it to it's like watching your child drown and knowing that if you jump in to save them, you both go under.
Yeah.
So you need to let them struggle because they will rise to the top and they will reach up.
And you can
But
stand,
sometimes it has to go lower than you
there.
can stand. You just have to shut it out and let it go.
Yeah.
It's hard.
Well, actually, I think there's a nuance between, like, shutting it out, for example, because I sort of think that that's what my parents did. They shut it out. But I think that there's a difference.
I didn't mean that. I didn't mean shut it out like that.
For these guys, I think it's an important thing to sort of
to make that point. I want you to make that point. Yeah, absolutely.
Because I think that when you're not okay with your pain, there's a bypass. And the bypass is, I'm just going to ignore that it's happening.
Yeah.
There's a big difference. Like, I see it as your system emotionally is it's a machine, right? And that machine has the ability to transmute different energy and emotion. And the power of compassion and love is so powerful at holding a space for pain and actually becoming a transmuter of that.
Yes.
So as a parent, you are definitely holding a space for your child. It doesn't matter how distant that they seem. You know, you are holding a significant space. I was distant from my family because I was anxious to the point that I felt like I couldn't even be in the same room with them without feeling like I was going to have an anxiety attack, because their energy affected me so much. I was afraid to be in, you know, a vicinity as them, and so I would hide in my room. But in the eyes of my mum and dad, I was being, you know, a bad kid, and I wasn't communicating, and all of these assumptions that weren't true. I was really very sensitive and innocent in that. What I needed them to do was not avoid or pretend like it wasn't happening, but to actually be with me in that, but hold a different space. So not drown.
Change their energy.
Yeah, exactly. Not drown with me, not just feel my pain. That doesn't do any good.
No.
But to actually help be in that space where I was feeling pain and actually just keep holding a space of love and compassion. And it's like an unconditional love.
And what would that look like to you? I have a story on my videos of a woman that had a really great energy that she transferred from going in her daughter's room every day and opening the door and say, when are you going to get a job, to taking out a journal and saying all these lovely things and writing down really good affirmations about her daughter and letting go.
Beautiful.
Not going in her room. And within, I think, 48 hours, the child came out of the room and asked for help.
I think there's a cool metaphor for this, and it's you know, it's a facilitation technique I use, but it's can be applicable in all of life. And it's asking, what is the energetic required for me to get the desired outcome, right? So if you, I'll use a very basic example. If you're at a bar, for example, and there's a guy or girl that you want to ask out, you probably don't want to set an energetic of being a dickhead or being really aggressive or angry, because it's probably not going to get you the outcome that you want.
Right.
You want to set an energetic of, I'm going to be joyous or playful or charming or witty or whatever that energetic is. And through setting that energetic, my chances of that outcome manifesting are so much higher.
Right.
So when you apply that to sort of these situations, I feel like parents, they're feeding an energetic of frustration or anger or pain, but they're expecting their child to have a breakthrough that's one of, I love you so much and I want to communicate and I want to be honest with you and I feel safe with you all of a sudden.
Right.
Like, you've got to set the energetic precedent for that to happen. And then 99.9% of the time it will happen, because where focus goes, energy flows. Like, it's just the law of nature, of physics.
And physics, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's so true. Yeah. What you focus on grows. So if you're mirroring the child's pain, it's reflected back, and it's a no-win situation. It just perpetuates the pain. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, I really like this example of your kid doesn't have a job. Well, imagine if you wrote them a letter, for example, in this instance, and you said, outlined in the letter, like, you thought to yourself, who does my child need to become, or what do they need to realize about themselves? Not even
I like that.
Not
Realize
even what do they
themselves.
need to become, but who are they that they're not seeing in themselves?
Yes.
And you actually just honored the shit out of all of those parts of them that they weren't loving.
And that's basically what she did. It shifted that energy without ever coming in contact with her to say it, just to write it.
Yeah.
And I did that with, my son when he was struggling in college. When I said I cut it off, I cut the energy of the mother thinking she has to fix the child.
Yeah.
That she has to save the child, that it's her duty. That is a rule we put on ourselves from society.
Yeah.
And in a mother's defense, we do birth these children.
Yeah.
And we have to be so astute when they're younger, and then we grow with them. And we start detaching, over the years. And some people don't detach well.
Yeah.
And that's a whole nother talk.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's
attachment styles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think you're a very enlightened soul and could do a lot of good. And I know you're spreading this message of love out loud. What does your next few weeks look like? Do you have an agenda to kind of come down off this high for a little bit, or are you going straight into
I'm in a theatre show in Amsterdam tomorrow.
Oh.
Yeah.
No slowing down.
Yeah. I feel like actually the best is yet to come. This has been amazing, but I live by the philosophy: the better it gets, the better it gets.
Oh, that momentum, that energy,
yeah,
right?
Exactly. It can only get better from here. So
what's the show about?
It's called Truth to Power, and it's essentially people sharing like deep truths that once held them back and were a source of shame, and becoming liberated through that process of speaking their truth. So I can't wait. Actually, I don't have enough time in theatre, and that was my first love, acting, and that's sort of where speaking and facilitation grew from.
Yeah.
So any opportunity
it's a great
to be
foundation.
back in that space. Yeah.
I actually did a couple of plays, not on purpose.
Yeah.
I got dragged into it by my theater kid.
Yeah.
They needed extras, and then
That's
they kept
great.
putting on the parts, and and I realize now in retrospect, it was helping me to do this work.
Totally.
You know?
Yeah, to be comfortable.
To be comfortable on stage, to be comfortable in interviewing people, to be comfortable with really in any situation. And I think a theater is such a great outlet for sensitive children.
It's pretty misunderstood. Like the type of theatre that I was trained in, which is called Meisner, it's an amazing style of theatre. And the premise of it is not acting, rather being 100% yourself under the given imaginary circumstances. So what it pushes you to do is actually shed your ego, which is your idea of self, and ask yourself questions like, who would I be as a rapist? Who would I be as a murderer?
It makes everyone human to you.
Well, yeah, nothing is off bounds. And it just feds so much of every cell in my body, because the human condition has always just been the greatest source of fascination. And performance has been the only outlet that's really allowed me to get into the skin of the people that I still judge and repress, and really genuinely take on not a character, but that is in me. You know, the fact that I can witness that external to me means that I can identify it inside
It's in all
of
of
me.
us. Yeah. We all have that. Because you are me and I am you.
Yeah, exactly.
We're all one.
Right.
And if we're at a conference right now with people from all over the world, I haven't had one conversation that I couldn't identify myself in their story.
Exactly.
From the mother that lost her child and had to rise up to save her other child, to you, a 25-year-old from Australia, to a young boy that I interviewed. There's so many different people from different areas and different cultures, and to make this world so small
is so amazing.
Yeah. So we all love with the same heart space, you know, and if we have hate in our heart, that's what we see. So switching that, just flipping that switch to love or above and operating from that frequency can shift the energy, just like we're talking about with these stories of the parent-child relationship. You can do that in any space with the boss that you don't resonate with.
Totally.
Look at him and say, how is that a reflection in me? And what can I do to shed light and love? Maybe write some nice things about him on your notepad, you know?
Being okay with the part of you that does hate too. Because I think when you judge, like, I know hate is such a strong emotion. Right? And like, really the only thing as strong as hate is love. And there's a power in experiencing that experience. And I noticed when I was in like a feeling of hate, which is so extreme and so not where I resonate generally, by resisting or hating the fact that I felt hate, it actually just perpetuated the hate.
Absolutely.
And I couldn't just switch and be like, okay, well, I'm going to choose to love instead. I actually had to really acknowledge that. And through the acknowledgement of it, it sort of could ease and release, and I had a little bit of free will again. I think it's an important thing to understand that whatever you're feeling is okay, genuinely.
Yep. As long as you don't keep it in here.
Yeah.
I like to tell people to journal it out and say whatever nasty stuff comes out.
Yeah.
Because it usually helps you get it out and create that.
Then burn it.
I do say burn it. Then burn it. Nobody needs to find that hate.
Don't leave that lying around.
That just perpetuates hate and misunderstanding. But we all have a toxic buildup. If we do get triggered, it creates a chemical chaos. And, you know, those hormone releases, and that's chemicals in the brain. And some of us don't let those chemicals go out quickly enough. So we have a period where we're irrational thinking. And we need to get that irrationalization out of our head and see, why do I feel like this? Has there been something I've been suppressing and it's been just bubbling out in maybe passive-aggressive ways? And definitely. Now it's going to explode. Write it out, get it out, and then address it with, this situation is making me feel like this, once you've gotten all the hate out.
Yeah, for sure.
Because, you know, it can really be a catalyst for change. You know, what's worse than that is when you're complacent.
Yeah.
And you're just,
apathy, or
yes,
indecision.
you're just being led around.
Yeah.
And one day you feel like, where has my life gone? Where's my passion? Where's my drive?
It's one of my greatest fears.
That'll never happen to you.
I know.
Once you've awakened, you can't go back to sleep.
The idea of that is such a painful thing to think about. Letting life just pass by, and to eventually have to wake up, even if that's on your deathbed, and be like, "What was I doing? What did I prioritize?"
We all have greatness inside of us. Some people don't see their greatness, and it's a sad thing. You know, that I came from that. I played small because I thought, okay, I'm just supposed to be this mom, or I'm just supposed to be this good girl, and didn't really acknowledge the feelings and the desires inside of me. And that happens to a lot of moms in my generation in particular. I'm 47. So I think your generation, the millennials that get such a bad rap, I think they're amazing. I think they're changing the world.
Thank you.
They're making love their priority. They're making themselves their priority, self-love, and that resonates so deeply for others. And it forces the industry to change, you know, from, dads being absent because they're working from 6:30 to 8:30 at night, and moms trying to juggle jobs and commitments to home, and it's definitely needed to change.
We all stand on the shoulders of giants. I think it's an important thing to remember that, like, when we have kids, you know, they're gonna be able to learn everything that it took us our whole lives to learn in, you know, a matter of a few years growing up, and then they get to stand on our shoulders and become even more.
Yeah,
it's really important, to acknowledge that, and our ancestors that did that for us, because I think we look at it in this microcosm of, well, what are the specific behaviours of this generation and how does that differ? But if you zoomed out, even though there's different specifics, I think it would very much be the same cycle of, I learnt from my parents and I could see their blind spots, and I'm going to use that and evolve, you know, and have a broader perspective, and that's such a beautiful thing. And I really hope that my generation look at that and think, wow, you know, it was only my great grandparents that fought in war for my freedom. It was when my mum was graduating school, she was heavily pressured to pursue one of two things, to become a teacher or a secretary. You know, I left school at 13 to pursue arts and was encouraged to, you know, become an entrepreneur. That's such a whirlwind apart.
Yeah, and same here. My kids are getting raised very differently than we did. So that's the, you know, that opposite effect, you know, and I have grandchildren, so they're getting raised very different than my kids got raised.
Yeah, exactly.
Much to my happiness, you know, because of the changes I made.
Yeah.
So have you seen, the big question I ask everybody, have you seen that because you had to change to love yourself, it allowed other people to love themselves?
I hope so. And those that don't yet, I think it's definitely triggered the journey.
Yeah, that's right.
Like 100%. You can't not change without that creating ripples. But I was in a very fortunate position in that, you know, my biggest change happened leading up to graduation of school, and then I sort of had a clean slate. Like, I think that was unique in a sense, because I think maybe sometimes people are waking up but they're still in the same job and their circumstances are the same, and they're changing, and then everyone's looking at them like, whoa, like, why you're changing, there's so many changes, but everything in my life was new.
Right.
So I sort of had an opportunity to
recreate yourself.
Recreate myself, yeah. And I would,
this is a good point to make. It's hard to be changing in a marriage. For, you know, my audience, a lot of women hit their 40s and they start that self-love cycle and really looking at their life and saying it's dwindling down, and I haven't lived for me, I've lived for everybody else.
Yeah.
And I know that's a struggle. Yeah. So being able to step out of that and escape that struggle and recreate yourself, and not, because it's like the alcoholic that comes home from rehab and has, you know, he can't go back to the bar. He can't go back to the bar friends. Yeah. So it definitely is a struggle to be in the same circumstances.
And communication
and
is key. Communication. If you want to stay within the same context, you need to really be strong at asserting who you are now. And if that can't be respected, you know, I think it's Brene Brown that talks about boundaries in a really beautiful way. She says, if you don't know where to draw your line, then you have absolutely no gauge whether or not someone's trustworthy. Because trust comes from asserting a boundary and then having that respected.
Absolutely.
That's how you build trust with someone.
Absolutely.
So unless you know how to assert those boundaries, then someone can't actually meet those boundaries with respect, and you can't develop trust.
Good job. I love Brene Brown too.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Nicole has to get to the airport, so we're going to end this. But I'm going to post all about her book. I think it's incredible. I started reading it. I think she resonates with teens and adults and everyone, because she's spreading the same message we all need to. Love yourself so that you can love others.
That's it.
Shift the energy in any relationship and any circumstances, even if you're getting a ticket from a cop. You can shed love.
That's a hard one. It really is. I even feel it when I see other people getting parking tickets.
Even when somebody cuts you off in traffic. So, well, thank you for taking
so
your last precious time here to spend it with
My
me.
pleasure.
I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Thanks.
Thank you.